Welcome to the Exhaust Notes Podcast.
What is good, everyone? Welcome to the Exhaust Notes Formula One Podcast, your new favorite Formula One podcast. My name is Nick Engvall. I'm with my guys Todd and Rohit to talk about some racing and some drama and some silly season. It's just a permanent silly season this year. So what's good, guys? How you doing?
I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate Carlos Sainz and Ferrari for winning the 2024 Formula One Constructor and Driver Championship. Because we all know if Max wins and Red Bull wins, it doesn't count anymore. So congratulations, gentlemen. It was a one-race season, and we're very impressed that you, Carlos, did it without an appendix. But we're not going to condone the fact that you're telling other drivers to take out their appendix. Anyway, I'll defer to somebody who I think has an appendix. Todd, how are you?
I do, in fact, have my appendix. And
take it out.
Yeah, for weight savings. Come on. You don't need an appendix. But I have to start this episode with a public apology to one Mr. Curry in a Hurry, Rohit Malhotra, because all this time, if you would have asked me for the last 2 years which Ferrari driver I'd rather have in my car, I would have taken Chuck Leclerc, Charles Leclerc.
Lord Percival.
And I feel like if you look back at the last 20 races and the only people that have won are a Red Bull driver or Carlos Sainz, it just proves Carlos Sainz is a better driver.
You know what? I thank you for that.
So I humbly apologize.
I'm ready to zag now and say Charles is the... No, I'm not. Come on. We all know what's going on. We all know he's been better. And this is something I was talking to somebody else about because we are, for a lot of us that are new to the sport, part of the Drive to Survive generation. And we'll talk about the other show favorite, Danny Rick, in due time with regards to this episode. But the secret sauce of Drive to Survive was not the fact that Danny Rick was the protagonist for season one. It's the fact that he was a co-protagonist for the entire series. And that other protagonist is Carlos Sainz. And it seems that everything Danny Rick tried to do, Carlos Sainz did, and did it with a great deal of success. He was able to switch teams. He was able to usher in a new era. He was able to put his head down and just get the results. And now we are possibly talking about the hottest commodity coming into the 2025 season.
He is now. I can't think of another driver.
The closest thing I could think of is Checo. And Checo had the 20 to first run that I think is probably going to stand the test of time. It's probably one of the most dramatic things we've seen. That's going to kind of get buried in the Lewis and Max of it all. But what Carlos has done is startling, to say the least.
Yeah, I don't know if Checo is up there anymore. I mean, he's obviously a great driver, but I feel like
you're only as good as your last Drive to Survive spotlight episode, it seems.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Checo's a surprising answer. I mean, I think he's proven that every dog has his day. But, Lance Stroll in the wet's a good driver, right? We've made that joke a million times.
As a famous friend of mine once said, but is he? How were the last couple of Lance Stroll wet races? Remind me.
Oh God, I can't even think of any off the top of my head. What was the last race in the wet?
That didn't involve the words Anita Driver and Danny Rick's thick neck.
Thick Rick racing for love. Oh man, I can't. Anyway, I can't satisfy your tangent, but if they're the only person that would be more wanted in another car, obviously, is Max Verstappen, which there's still rumors floating around. If Newey leaves, then Max is out, and he would love to go to Mercedes or Ferrari or God. Could you imagine they ditch both the Ferrari drivers and put Max and Lewis in the same team at Ferrari? It'd be amazing.
Then Charles Leclerc would truly be the saddest boy of all time. We've hinted at this, we've made books about it, but he would what else does he have to do? Because I think now I've almost underrated him in regards to attacking him, in the sense that I think he's an inferior driver compared to Smooth Operator. but he's not chopped liver, sad to say. And I thought it was very telling that during the race broadcast, I think it was Crofty who brought up that hypothetical of, if you're Fred Vassar, are you going to tell Carlos Sainz, hey, Carlos, come to second so Charlie can get ahead of you and then not only win the race, but then lead the actual driver standing? And they're like, nah, bro, we're not trying to mess this up, even though we are Ferrari.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine. I don't know what the Tifosi would do. They would celebrate or boo in that instance, taking unnecessary risks, driver swapping.
But I don't know if we have an answer for this, but watching Carlos this weekend kind of made me wonder, has a driver, what's the best a driver has done in a car that he is essentially no longer going to be in?
I'll think 20th to first, no?
No, that was one race. I would actually give it to Vettel.
Vettel and Red Bull last year's?
Well, yeah, he was. I was actually talking about Vettel and Ferrari, but that second year of Ferrari was pretty atrocious. That's a good question.
Because, I mean, the other side of the equation right now being Lewis and in the Mercedes, and, you know, car dies. And then
Nico Rosberg, there's your answer. Won the World Drivers' Championship and then just said, I'm out. Peace, bitches.
Well, but he won and then said he's out, right? I'm thinking like people that we know that have already signed a new contract. I respect the like, hey, I'm going out on top approach to it, you know?
Danny Rick's second year of Alpine was actually really good. And I want to just shoehorn that in there because we're not going to say anything else positive about Danny Rick on this episode. So,
because his second year with RB is not doing well.
I guess it's the third race, but
has he even made it one full calendar year? Like, when did he join the team last year? Like, how many races into the season?
8.
8? Okay. And for a full season, you need how many races?
20. Well, what was last year? 23?
23. And they canceled one. And so I guess 22 is the barometer, because didn't they cancel one of the Italian GPs? So let's say 22 is the full season. He had 8 last year.
He didn't actually have. He might not have had that many because remember he missed like 5 races for breaking his hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're telling me Lance Stroll did something that Danny Rick couldn't?
I'd have to laugh, otherwise I would cry.
All right. So what else do we have to say about this weekend's race?
Well, let's start with the start, right? Max won the launch off the line, and it was it lap 2 or lap 3 retired?
3.
Lap 3. Very uncharacteristic, Red Bull mechanical malfunction. Well, I guess it is uncharacteristic now. But, I guess his right rear brake got stuck on, and that's what, when he went to brake into turn 6 or something, he had that little wobble, and that's what let Carlos get past him. And then smoke started, and then
the pit lane entry was hilarious with no context.
Oh, the just explosion at the side. I feel like that's going to be gift meme to death in the next couple of years.
Now, I mean, between that and the Gunther Steiner interviews, which I also kind of want to try to get 3 minutes for at the end of the race, let's just say this. Gunther Steiner is a man of many talents and many things. Post-race interviewing might not be one of them.
That was as awkward as the whole Danny Rick ESPN couch
with
commando.
Marshawn Lynch and Will Arnett.
Yeah, that was rough. Gunther, he did his best. But, it's sad to me, going back to the Red Bull thing, it's sad to me that we get that because the level of dominance is so high that we get that excited. We're like, oh, Max DNF'd. That means someone else has to win. Like, I felt that.
Yeah.
There was no greater joy I felt with regards to a Formula One sense of things in the last 18 months than reading the tweet saying Max and Lewis are both out. And then the mental math that I had to do was very similar to like a Homer Simpson cartoon where I'm like, Max and Lewis are both out? Why are they racing right now? I thought they would race on Sunday. Oh my God, the race is on. That's right.
Yeah.
I host a nationally recognized Formula One podcast, and even I don't know when the races are on anymore.
I mean, Australia always sneaks up on me just because.
How random it is.
Yeah, it's like the only one that's way off the mark for us, right? It's either you're up at the crack of dawn or you're up 3 hours before the crack of dawn, or it's in America.
Yeah. Well, actually, the start to this season has been weird because we had Ramadan and those first two races were on Saturday. So it ended up being the day before for us at like midnight or something.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the wrong kind of attitude to have as a Formula One fan. It's like, hey, the best guy and the best car is out. That means somebody else could. I bet even our Max stands in the Discord were excited that like somebody else was going to win.
Yeah, because they can then use it as a footnote, being like, you other nerds, remember when you got excited for one race because our guy couldn't even show up?
I mean, Go ahead.
Okay, maybe it wasn't that exciting of a race other than that, with the exception of the very end of the race, which we'll talk about. But like the fact that McLaren was close enough to put pressure on Ferrari and there was like some pit strategy going on. There was like a lot of battling for, 10th, 11th, 12th. That was really interesting. It wasn't overshadowed by Max fucking off out front by 30 seconds for the first time in a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, that would have been his 10th straight win in a row, right? So,
yeah.
And how's the record?
A record that he set already.
Yeah, he set his own
2 years
record.
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically been Max, 20 out of the last 25 races?
So basically, he's going for the Dwight Goodman, nobody makes me bleed my own blood, Carlos. I'm coming after you.
Yeah. Yeah. I would not be surprised if he wins by 6 days.
No, let me ask you this. Over under half a race of Max Verstappen and non-Max Verstappen winners for the rest of the season.
What's the over under? 0.5, you said?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll take the over.
Yeah, I'll take the over. I think it's just a good reminder that even the teams that seem unbeatable
are
bound to mess up at some point, right? Like it really does take the whole team for those guys to win, and it kind of I mean, look, it's hard to say it sucks having somebody like Max who's so dominant because that's how Formula One has been. And you obviously want to see somebody like Max, you want to see somebody break records, that's sports in general, right? Like, love it or hate it, that's what makes it great is who's that next person that's going to take the throne and carry it to the next level. But I think that's the hardest part about watching, well, I take that back. The hardest part about this weekend for me was the fact that I put Max on my fantasy team for the first time in 3 years last race. And then he goes and fucks off. What the hell, man?
I did the same thing. I was trying to do the whole let's do balance with two good teams thing. And so I sacrificing Max, and it's obviously not working because I'm not in first or even near first in either league I'm in. And then I was like, you know what? I just got to be like everybody else. Max Verstappen, put the double points thing on him. Fucking DNFs.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not playing this year.
Oh.
But I do think that this race is, I think it'll be really good for Carlos, right? Obviously a win is great for anybody, but I think Carlos has had so many just shit moments at Ferrari, And then he's also lost so many times to Max directly, or, I think this is hopefully, a little bit of a spark to say like, oh, I can do this, because he was like, I don't know if he wins the race if Max, doesn't, DNF, but it feels like these types of things can be turning points for the other teams to be like, oh, there is a possibility there. And happening this early in the season too, like points wise, they're not that far off right now. Like, even though we're 3 races in, it felt like Max had already won this season, like.
Well, to be fair, like before the season even started, it felt like Max won this season, right? Yeah. Preseason, he's like, 60% power, still clearing everybody by 5 or 6 tenths. But the juxtaposition of that, which I found so funny, is like Max DNFs. He's super pissed off, screaming on the radio. After, post-race or his post-race interviews, he's like, his kind of typical aloof, kind of annoyed Max Verstappen. Meanwhile, we have Sauber, kick, steak, whatever the hell, doing 50-second pit stops, and they're just like, okay, everybody be careful. Be careful. Let's not over tighten the wheel nuts. And they still do it and cost themselves a point. It's just the level of expectation at those two teams is wild.
Yeah. The spare nut anecdote killed me. They're literally holding spare nuts just to make sure that they don't use them or whatever the hell that story was. And I was like, you guys are every bit extreme as that green on your car